Hi, I'm Gwen Turner, and thank you so much for giving me just a few minutes of your time. I really appreciate it. I need to tell you something about addiction. I need to tell you how it works with our emotions and what it takes to get out of this cycle of addiction. This video is especially important for you if you are someone who's struggling with an addiction, or if you're someone who's struggling with some other compulsive behavior, or if you're someone who loves somebody who's struggling with an addiction, and especially if you are someone who's been affected by addiction in some way because you love someone, or because it's affecting you personally, or because maybe it's something that you grew up with and around. And this, I hope, will help you to understand the construct of addiction better, to help you have more compassion for yourself and others who are struggling. I also hope that it will give you hope and a better understanding of what it takes to get out of addiction. Now, in addiction recovery communities, we hear verbiage all the time that is actually super harmful. These ideas of once an addict, always an addict, one day at a time. You're inside in a recovery meeting and your addiction is out in the parking lot getting ready. I'm telling you right now, these are harmful statements. These are harmful mentalities. These are harmful sentiments. Now, I understand. I'm someone who did struggle with an addiction for over 20 years of my life. I went into it and out of it all the time. I tried and I failed, and I tried and I failed. My lived experience was that when I was trying, it was one day at a time. I did have to white knuckle my way through cravings. I did have to suffer. And that's because what I believed, in part because of the verbiage that is so heavily promoted in addiction recovery communities, what I believed, what I was taught, is that the best that I could ever hope for from any addiction recovery community, any addiction recovery program, even God, my highest power, was that I would be willing and able to white knuckle my way through cravings for the rest of my life. I believe that was all that was possible to me because I was taught, and I believed that once an addict, always an addict. What that said to me was that this little crosshair inside of me that made me want something that was dangerous and that was going to be destructive to my life and my family and my opportunities, the thing inside of me that made me crave that danger, to crave that thing, even though it was bad for me, I would never get over it, because once an addict, always an addict. So that the best that I could ever hope for was that I could at least train myself to not act like an addict, but I would never feel like a normal person. Now, that was a really discouraging promise. That was a really discouraging belief, but also that was the best that I thought that I could get. At least I felt like, well, at least it will be better than what I have, which is I have this behavior, I have these habits that are creating destruction. I'm going to die. I'm going to die fast, or I'm going to die slow. I'm going to die slow over time as I continue to abuse my body, or I'm going to die fast because I'm going to commit suicide. I had gotten so hopeless that I just didn't know what to do, what else to do. And so I say that because it's really important for you to understand that at this point, maybe you have tried and failed a lot of times. Maybe in those moments that you're trying, you are white knuckling your way through cravings. Maybe your lived experience gives you a lot of evidence that once an addict, always an addict, because you've relapsed and you've relapsed and you've relapsed. But I am going to tell you that there is a better way to do it. There is hope. There is a way to break free of it in a way that is peaceful. I don't know if you've ever read the Alcoholics Anonymous book. It's a wonderful book. It's a universal text for any and all addictions. And what it really talks about there are principles and strategies that really help to change you from the inside out, not the outside in. Here's the difference. If you are changed from the inside out, you will no longer want the things that you want right now. What you want will actually change. Right now, you're living in a destructive pattern because you are reaching for things that are not serving you. And you're doing it when you want to. You don't always want to. When you're in your rational mind, sitting on your couch with people you love, or doing something that's interesting to you, you're not thinking, I'd really like to go ruin my life today, or I'd really like to go hurt someone I love and do a destructive thing. That is not what you're choosing to do. But there are moments where you find yourself doing it anyway. I promise you're not crazy. That's just a loop that we fall into, really for the same reason over and over, which is that we're just trying to manage pain. We're trying to manage emotional discomfort, spiritual discomfort. And so it creates in us this itch where we need to reach for something that's going to satisfy those feelings, to satisfy that discomfort. For the addict, we've just found something that's really, really helpful to do that. Everybody's like that. When we're uncomfortable, we try to get comfortable. Now, how do we do that in a way that is safe? Because right now, if you're reaching in your addiction, if you're relapsing into addiction, if you find yourself lost in this constant wave of doing the practice over and over and over again, you might be wondering, what's the way out? How can I do it? And again, maybe you feel like the only way out is to white knuckle your way through it forever. Or maybe you're looking into a 12-step program and you think the only way out is to have somebody looking over your shoulder and policing everything you do for every single day the rest of your life, and trying to white knuckle your way through cravings for the rest of your life. and going to a meeting every day for the rest of your life, and promising to a community of people that you won't use today for the rest of your life, and identifying yourself as I am an addict for the rest of your life. I'm telling you, there's a better way. There's an easier way. There is a path to peaceful and permanent addiction recovery. Right now, you've created a life by doing what you want, when you want to do it, however you want to do it. And I can tell you that if you spend the time to change from the inside out, what you want will change. How you want to do things change. When you want to do things, it will change. And you will find yourself creating a life of beauty and joy the same way that you created one of destruction, which is doing what you want. And I will also tell you that what you think right now is happening is that you're reaching for this thing you want that's going to destroy your life. You don't want your addiction. Like, do you want your addiction? No. You don't want your addiction. You don't want the side effects. You don't want the fallout. You don't want the pain for you and the people around you. You don't want the blame. You don't want the shame. You don't want the guilt. You don't want the destruction. You don't want the poor help. You don't want your addiction. I know. So when I say you're doing what you want, I know you don't want your addiction. But let me tell you what is happening. I learned this years ago in therapy. I had a therapist tell me, hey, you're going to come in here. We're going to teach you some principles. We're going to teach you new skills. But beware, because when your nervous system is super activated, when you're in crisis mode, when you are in fight or flight, when you are emotionally dysregulated, all the skills we're teaching you are going to go out of the window, because there's only going to be one thing and one thing only you're going to care about, and there's only going to be one thing that you actually need, which is to get out of fight or flight, which is to get out of crisis mode, which is to calm your nervous system. You can't access those other skills until you do. So when you're in that space, you actually need a lot shorter list of skills to get you out of fight or flight, out of crisis mode, so that then you can apply more skills. So how does that apply to addiction? Well, think about it like this. If you're in a place where your nervous system is activated, if you're uncomfortable, if you're sad, if you're mad, if you're afraid, when you're activated, you just need relief. Biologically speaking, psychologically speaking, you just need relief. And an addict is just someone who's found something that gives you relief very well. Now, it does give you something. You're not crazy. You are in a space where you know that's what you need, is to just feel better. What you want more than anything in the world is to feel better. So you're going to move into a place where you can get that. So an addiction, okay, we found something that does that for us. And it does it really well. It does give us something. It does move us to a place where we're a little bit more regulated. Well, then what happens? Well, after that, then we're in a place where we become even more emotionally dysregulated, because we wake up and we see the destruction that we have continued to do. We see the promises that we've continued to break. We see the behaviors that we're still doing that are creating shame and embarrassment, guilt, hopelessness, fear, resentment, all of those things. We're still doing it. So even though our addiction gives, it gives, and then it takes, and it takes, and it takes, and it takes. Now, when we're in a space where we believe that the only way out is to put distance between us and our addiction, to never touch it again, to never go back into it again, if that's the only thing you know to do in order to feel better in your life, and if you go into it because you're stressed out and you're struggling, one way to create a lot of stress in your life is to immediately try to take your addiction out of it, because that's all that you have. That's the thing that helps you to cope with the life that you're in. That's the only thing you have to help you to mask all of the pain that you are carrying. So if you take your addiction away, what's left? It is all of the pain you're carrying. So when we move into a program where the requirement is that we white knuckle our way through this for the rest of our life, maybe we will be in the small percentage of people who have what it takes to make our life look normal, but we'll never have what we feel. Your life might look the way you want it to look for a time, but it will never feel the way you want it to feel, which is calm, peaceful, hopeful. You want serenity, you want happiness, you want joy, you want to not want destructive behaviors. You want to not have cravings. White knuckling sucks. Craving sucks. And all it does is add more pain for us to now manage. So it gets really tricky. So what do? What's the solution? Thank you for coming with me this far in the video. And now I want to tell you that there is a solution. There is no such thing as rock bottom. Now, I hit rock bottom a lot of times, and rock bottom looked different for me every time I hit it. Every time I hit rock bottom, there was a little part of me that was afraid and a lot of me that was relieved. Because if I was like, I finally hit rock bottom, now I'm going to be scared enough, I've lost enough, that I will certainly change. I will certainly never go back and do that again. Well, I was wrong. That wasn't rock bottom apparently, because I still found ways to create more havoc and more chaos and more damage and more loss in my life. I kept going and I kept going and I kept going, and I hit rock bottom after rock bottom after rock bottom. Now, by the grace of God, I did finally hit my last rock bottom. Now, after I hit my last rock bottom and finally thought, well, I'll try one more time. I'll go back into a recovery program and try one more time. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm willing to white knuckle my way through the rest of my life. I'm willing to let somebody police my behaviors for the rest of my life and stand as a gatekeeper between me and God. I will do whatever I have to do to beat this because I want to live. I had become suicidal. So I recognized I was really in a fight for my life. I was going to do whatever it took. Thankfully, there's just the lineup of the right people, the right literature, the right time, the right space for me to realize that there was more that I could expect out of recovery, that I could expect that not only can I be able to train my behaviors so that my life could look the way I wanted it to look, but I could have that thing in my chest that made me want dangerous things. I could have that uprooted, and I could feel the way I wanted to feel. That I could lose my desire for those things completely and actually be someone who was fully recovered inside and out, and that the outside of my life would be a reflection of what was inside of my heart. As an addict in addiction, the outside of my life becomes a reflection of what's inside of my heart. Chaos, insanity, darkness, grief. What's inside of my heart is reflected outside of my heart. In true addiction recovery, when you find that thing that is beautiful and attractive and desirable, you find that in recovery, you don't have to keep pushing yourself to the other side. You will find something that is so beautiful, it will pull you to the other side. That doesn't take a whole lot of effort on your part. Because when you find that thing that is beautiful and peaceful and desirable, what you will recognize is that that was the thing you were chasing the whole time. You were chasing comfort. You were chasing peace. So when you find that tool that gives you that comfort and gives you that peace, chase it. Keep chasing it. Now, I'm going to break it down to a few simple principles here. I'm going to use a couple metaphors. I hope this will help get you going in the right direction. And I also hope it's going to blow your mind a little bit and help you look at addiction in a new way. And again, I hope that gives you a little bit more understanding and compassion for yourself for sure. I hope it gives you hope that there is a way out for sure. But if it's not you, if you're not the addict who's watching this video, then I hope it's going to give you a little bit of comfort to know that your loved one is not past help. And also a little more compassion and a little more patience with what they're going through, and to recognize that there's not a whole lot of difference between normal people and addicts. We're all just people who are uncomfortable. We're looking for comfort. And an addict is just someone who found something that does it really, really well, but they're also someone who's struggling with so much pain they don't know what to do with it. They're just trying to find relief in the only way that they can find it. So now let's look at the construct of addiction. I'm going to use an analogy of a hoarder. Imagine that you wanted to do an intervention for somebody who is a hoarder. The first thing you would do is you would show up at that house with a great big box of black trash bags, and you would start shoving garbage into that bag and then throwing it out into the dumpster. You'd work all day. You'd work all night for days until finally that house would be clean. Imagine standing in that house after days of hard work. The floors are clean, the countertops are shiny, the silver has been polished, knowing that the person who made the mess in the first place is the person who's going to have to move back into that house. Now, when the hoarder comes back in, what's going to happen? That hoarder is going to move in and make it a mess again. So when you want to do an intervention for someone who is a hoarder, yes, take the time, do a deep clean. But you're going to have to make sure that that person learns the skill of daily pickup, right? So we are kind of like hoarders. As addicts, people who've been an addict, who are in an active addiction, what that just means is that this is somebody who has been collecting pain their whole life. We hoard pain. That's what addicts do. And a lot of us do. People do. It's just that we get to this place where we have pain. We have experiences in our life. We can't really process them. We don't know what to do with the pain of that. So it collects and it collects and it collects. And a lot of times you'll see that addicts had a trauma that maybe, started this thing happening in their life. I kind of sent them down this path. They just didn't know how to process it or how to move through it. So that's what we're doing, is we're collecting pain and we're holding on to pain. Now, in addiction recovery, what we have to do is take that same approach. We're looking at how do we clean up that big mess of pain, but also how do we manage the pain on a daily basis so it doesn't accumulate again. Both of those are really important. But again, I want to use this metaphor to help you to understand that what's happening is that we're just in a place where we've been collecting pain, and we don't know what to do with it. We're putting it on the shelf inside of our chest, and then suddenly there's no more room. We don't know where else to put the pain, and then we have to run to find some relief. So we move into an addiction that maybe isn't going to give us true relief, really, but at least it masks the pain, and for a moment we can forget that it's there at all. For a moment, we are not feeling it. And that a little bit looks like relief. And a lot of times it's the best that we can do and the best that we can manage. So that's what's happening in the space of an addiction, of an addict. And I want you to understand that, because all of us fall into this trap really of emotion, really, truly. What do we do with them? We get emotionally dysregulated, and what do we do to feel better? So I want you to understand that for an addict, this is just a scale that has tipped. And so it's not about the addiction. When we look at an addict, when we look at a life that is bent from addiction, we can look at it and be like, clearly the addiction is the problem, clearly, because look what it's doing. Look what people are doing. Look what they're doing to other people. Look what they've lost. Look what they're hurting. Look how they are hurting. It's the addiction. It's the addiction. I'm here to tell you, no, it's not. It is a byproduct of something else. I'm going to use another metaphor here. Imagine that you were in a house and a pipe burst, and now there's water gushing all over the floor. You come home from the movies and you see there's 3 inches of water everywhere. What's the first thing you're going to do? Are you going to grab a mop and start mopping up water? Or are you going to rush to find the pipe that broke and fix it? You better fix that pipe, because until you fix that pipe, that water is not going anywhere. In fact, it's just going to get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. When we look at addictive behaviors and practices, that's the water accumulating on the floor. But that is coming from a broken pipe. The broken pipe in this analogy, in this metaphor, it's the way that we process emotions. It's the way that we process our emotional dysregulation, our spiritual dysregulation, and we don't know how to do it. We don't know how to manage the pain, so it's just gushing out everywhere, and it just creates a problem where we need relief. And so what happens is that if you are trying to move through addiction recovery by grabbing a mop and mopping up floors, instead of focusing on fixing that pipe, you'll never stop. You'll never stop mopping up floors. You'll have to mop and mop and mop and mop and mop. Well, what does that translate to? That looks like white knuckling. That looks like looking at all these different tools and practices and principles that will try to control you from the outside in to help you to control your behavior and shape it into a life that looks normal. But until you do the work, until you go to the pipe and fix the pipe so that you feel normal, and that you feel relief, and you feel comfort, and you feel hope, and you feel peace, and you feel safe, that's the only thing that's going to stop the gush of water so that you never have to mop in the first place. So that's what addiction recovery is all about. And it's all about finding that thing that helps you to feel better, and recreating it and duplicating in your life, and chasing it and recreating it and duplicating it, and it feels good. It's the same pattern that we fall into in addiction. We found something that helps us to feel better. It feels good. So when we don't feel good and we're uncomfortable, we run to it. But when you find a better drug, you will use the better drug. And in this case, you can find something and implement something that gives, and then it gives and it gives and it gives. Now, I'm going to be talking to you about a higher power today. I don't know what that looks like for you. I don't know what that feels like for you. I don't know how you identify in that space. For me, I call that higher power God, so I'll just reference God for the rest of this video. But that's what it comes down to. If you can close this gap between you and your higher power and learn how to use your power, that higher power, in a way to help you spiritually and emotionally regulate yourself, you will find that side by side with the addiction and God, side by side, God does a better job. God does it better. He does it faster. The effects last way longer. Now, for me in my recovery, it took me a while to dial that in, because I had a long history of trust with my addiction. I knew how it was going to feel. I knew what it was going to give me, for sure. I didn't have that same trust with God. So even though I went through the practices and tools I'm going to tell you, even though I did that and it worked and I was able to feel my relief and I literally felt cravings unravel in real time, the next day when I was dysregulated again, I wasn't sure it was going to happen again. I wasn't sure God was going to show up for me. I didn't know if it was going to work the same way. I didn't know if I'd run out of miracles. It took time for me to trust that He's going to keep showing up when I asked. And that's really what it takes, is we ask Him to show up, and He does the heavy lifting. Now, you are probably been in a space where you've made promises to God and you've begged Him to take your addiction away, to protect you from the cravings and the urges to use. You've probably tried already to walk this space with God in some capacity, either because you are asking Him and He didn't show up, or because you're angry with Him and you just can't ask Him. Or maybe you're finally angry with Him and you stopped asking because He isn't showing up for you. So I'm going to tell you that when I say show up and ask God to take this from you, I'm not saying to ask Him to take your addiction. Your addiction is a mountain. Can God move mountains? Yes, He can move mountains. Hearts are a lot smaller though, so let's start there. When you come to God and you tell Him what's wrong with you here and say, I'm uncomfortable and I'm in pain here, can you take this pain away today, tonight, this moment, right now? Yes, He can, and He will. And when you experience that miracle today, right now, this moment, when you experience that, I'm telling you, you have experienced the miracle of recovery. Addiction recovery, all that is that experience over and over and over and over and over again. It gets easier over time. You become more fluent in it over time. And what you're doing is you're chasing peace, because you will find that thing that helps you to feel better, and you will keep doing it because you want to. You will do it when you want to, how you want to, however you want to. And you'll find over time your life is constructed into more and more and more peace, joy, happiness. You will know the way back there quickly, and it will happen faster than your addiction can do. And it's something that will last. So now let's talk about this a little bit. I want to talk to you a little bit about what it looks like when you start to begin to understand that emotional dysregulation causes us to move into craving, into an addiction, and we are off running for relief. Then we go into our addiction and it just creates more pain, so our collection just actually gets bigger. And now we're in a space where we're still trying to manage pain, so we're running back to our addiction, and we stay in this pain cycle. Now when you're in a pain cycle, what you're going to do is you're going to create more pain. You're going to try to get relief from that pain. It's going to create more pain, and it's over and over and over. What are some things that bring you pain in your life? Right now, top of the list, you're probably thinking your addiction, right? But just below that, when you remember the things that constructed your life before it was the addiction, maybe you're going to remember some trauma. Maybe some childhood trauma. Maybe active trauma right now. Maybe there are some financial issues. Maybe there's abuse of you, abuse of people you love. Who do you hate? Who just came to mind? Somebody, right? Who do you hate? I'm going to put hatred on here. What are you afraid of? You're afraid of something. I'm going to put fear on here. That could be a list of its own, though. You could probably fill 10 of these pages with what are you afraid of? What are you angry about, right? Some of the things are other injustices. Maybe right now you're really struggling with shame and guilt. Maybe you're struggling with hopelessness. Maybe you're struggling with a feeling of betrayal. Maybe it's you as an addict or someone who's been affected by someone with an addiction. Okay. All of these things, all of these are like little plants that we have planted in our heart that grow. And not these things specifically. It's the feelings that we have in response to these things. So I want you to understand that in life there are two things happening simultaneously all day, every day. There are events that are happening, and then there are how we feel about the events that are happening. Now, if it's a problem situation, then there are two problems happening simultaneously. I'll give you an example. If my dog gets outside and starts running around the neighborhood, two things are happening simultaneously. One, my dog is outside. She is out running around the neighborhood, and I'm going to have to get her back. That's a problem. I need to get her. I need to get her quick. The other problem that's happening is I'm very frustrated about it. I'm worried that maybe she's not going to get home. I'm mad that she's gotten out again. So I'm having a lot of feelings come up about it. Those are two problems happening at the same time. Now, a lot of times when we have events that cause emotions, they happen at the same time, they initiate at the same time, and then they solve at the same time. So in this example, my dog's out, I gotta go get her, I bring her home, and suddenly I feel better. I'm not afraid anymore, I'm not worried anymore, I'm not mad anymore, I feel better. The problem is solved, the circumstances have corrected themselves, it's fine. So we have the problem number one and problem number two start at the same time. They're resolved at the same time. But the problem comes in when we are in circumstances that will not resolve themselves. Things that create big feelings that we can't control because we can't control the situation. We can't control the circumstances. Here are some examples. In this analogy that I used about my dog, what if my dog never comes home? What if she gets hit by a car and dies? How am I going to resolve those feelings that I'm having about it? It's not like she's going to come home or just come back from the dead. It's an unfixable problem, and now I'm just left with the problem of how I feel about all of that. Some other examples that you might resonate with a little bit more are, what about things that happened in the past? Things you've done, things that have been done to you. The shame, the guilt, the horror, the abuse, the memories, all of those things. You can't go back and change any of it. It's an unfixable problem. So now what? You're just going to live with the regret and the shame and the grief and the sadness and the anger, and what do you do with all of that? Well, right now, maybe you're using a substance, maybe you're using a practice or a habit to help to numb that pain for you. But all of these things, they are not the problem. It's part of a problem. These are things that initiate the secondary problem. If you've had trauma, that's a problem. But the other problem is how you feel about the trauma that you've had. If you have financial issues right now, maybe you've lost your job, that's a problem that needs to be solved. But how do you feel about having lost your job? Are you embarrassed? Are you ashamed? Are you afraid? Are you angry? That's a secondary problem. Now, the solutions you will apply to find another job, very, very different solutions that you will apply to feel better about how you've lost your job. In our mind, a lot of times we sync it up and we're like, well, yeah, I'll feel better when I get another job. Duh. What if you never get a job? What if we move into a depression and there aren't jobs to get? What do you do then? We have to have a way to fix the emotional dysregulation we have over these things. Abuse, hatred, injustices against you. If there's been an injustice against you, you can't control that. That's somebody else's choice using their rights against you. And now you're being downtrodden. And how do you feel about that happening? There are two things happening. The problem of what's happening, the problem of how you feel about what's happening. And so all of these things, they squat down in our life and they just create feelings and feelings and feelings. And we can't control the circumstances that are happening here. Anything that's in the past, we can't control. Anything that's in the future, we can't necessarily control. If you go too far in the past, or not even that far at all, you could probably just go as far as yesterday. And when you start living there, there's a lot of resentment there. There's guilt, there's shame, there's embarrassment, there's secrets. So when you stretch into the past, you are wading through all of those big feelings. If you stretch too far into the future, a lot of times there's fear, there's worry, there's hopelessness, there's anxieties. So either direction, there's pain here, there's pain there. It can be really overwhelming. And so when we have these experiences and all of these things are happening to us or have happened to us, and they are these little machines that are just creating more pain. And how do we deal with pain? We move into an addiction. We move into a compulsive behavior, which creates more pain. So what's happening, imagine these are all happening in the same place. And they are happening in the same place. Your life, your heart, your mind. And what it's doing, the off gases of these things are horrible feelings, extreme discomfort. And it builds and it builds and it builds pressure. And it's so uncomfortable. And how are we going to deal with that pressure? Well, if we deal with it in a healthy way, maybe we'll go get therapy. So let's say we put therapy on here. Great, we'll go to therapy and that'll teach us new skills that we have to stress about and try to implement for each of these things. You're already stressed out, you're already overwhelmed, and now you have to figure out how to solve like 10 problems, and you have to do it by learning a new skill that you don't know yet, and that's really overwhelming. And then if you fail, okay, that adds more pressure. Well, let's say you don't go to therapy, let's say you move right back into addiction, and you sink into addiction. You exhaust yourself in addiction as a way to just deal with all these feelings. Whew. Okay, well, we already talked about how that's going to create more pain. Okay, but what if you go into addiction recovery? So let's say addiction recovery. That's what you're going to do. That's how you're going to solve the problem of addiction that's off-gassing a lot of pain and a lot of stuff in your life. Sure, go to an addiction recovery program. And they're going to tell you to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And they're going to give you somebody who's going to look over your shoulder and police everything that you're doing, who's going to tell you, you better do it right or I'm going to break up, perfection or nothing. You're going to go into an addiction recovery program and they're going to tell you to make calls every day and to do things that are uncomfortable for you and to surrender to a human being who is also broken and sick. And they're going to give you a whole checklist of things to do every day while you are managing the stresses of all of these things. That sounds stressful. Now, I'm not trying to knock addiction recovery programs in general. I'm just saying a lot of times, even though the 12 steps of addiction recovery often you'll see as an amazing, beautiful, simple tool that you can use to change from the inside out, truly, addiction recovery programs a lot of times, 12-step programs a lot of times, they're trying to change you from the outside in. They got the 12 steps over here and another long list of tools that they use that are trying to change you from the outside in, trying to control you, trying to help you to control your behavior better or allow someone else to help you control your behavior better. Woo, that creates a lot of stress. A lot of stress. If I'm under stress and you give me a checklist of like 10 more things I have to do every day and tell me if I don't do them I will die or hurt somebody that I love, oh my gosh. That's stressful. That creates a lot of pressure. So here we go. It doesn't matter how we try to manage these problems. It's creating more and more and more pressure. This is especially dangerous for the addict because how do we deal with pressure and stress? We found something that works and we're vulnerable to going to it when we feel this pressure mounting. The solution is smaller than you think. It's better than you could hope for. And it is to find and install a valve that will relieve that pressure. It's to find and install a funnel that will create movement. So these things can start to like peter out and move and create space in your heart. Because I'll tell you that if these things aren't here, this space fills with love and light and gladness and safety and security and serenity and joy and peace. That is what you are chasing. Right now, the best you know to do is to move into an addiction. That's it. And that just helps you forget that the pressure is there at all. But if you really could find something that puts this valve in place, and it isn't a checklist of 100 things, a funnel in place, not a checklist of 100 things, but a couple small tools that would give you this guarantee that once it's there and once it's installed, the pressure will vanish. When you go back to that hoarder analogy, that teaches us a very powerful principle. If you're in a hoarder's house and you're trying to clean up a great big mess, this is how you do it. You pick up one item at a time and you take care of it. If you live in a clean house and you're just trying to clean up after yourself every day and keep it clean, this is how you do it. You pick up one item at a time and you take care of it. It is a simple practice. It's done over and over again, consistently over time, but it's the same practice. And I'm telling you, there are a few small practices that you need to dial in to create this phenomenon, to give you that valve, to give you that hope, promise, and guarantee of success. And it's just something to dial in and do over and over again. And it feels good because as soon as you open that valve, like I said, if the pressure from all of these things, the off gas of these things, those horrible feelings, the discomfort, the fear, the hate, the anger, the frustration and the fear, the terror, the shame, the guilt, when you open a door and let the pressure out, what's left over is not an empty room. What's left over is all the things that you started with that are meant to be there in the first place, which is love, happiness, forgiveness. Look at a child, a small child, before they encounter the real world, before they've had those traumas, before they've had the disappointments and pains and abuses against them. They are happy, they are free, they run. That's our natural state. That's what is in this room. And when we fill it up with all of these other things, it just crowds out the love, it crowds out the peace. So what we're doing is we're going to find something that will give us that feeling, and then we're going to repeat those practices that give it to us. And it feels good, and the addict is just trying to feel good. They're just trying to find something that gives them a sense of relief and that they can trust it and count on it to happen. Okay? That's what's happening. And so if you think of a little valve like this, the kit would probably be this big. It's a small kit. You install it. It's a small day project to install this kit. Now, what is it really? Here I am still talking in metaphor. I'll tell you what it is. I'm going to tell you in simple terms, and then I'm going to tell you a little more deeply. But here's what happens. You're in a place, you feel that pressure building, that pressure building, that pressure building. You know the pressure. You know the pressure I'm talking about. You feel it building. And you pray, and you ask God, God, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling this pressure. I'm so mad. I'm so afraid for good reasons, because she did this and he did that, and I'm afraid this is going to happen and that's going to happen. I feel guilt. I feel shame for these reasons because I did this. I'm angry because this happened to me. But it doesn't serve me. It's hurting me, and I'm about to go hurt myself even more. Can you please just give me relief? Can you lift this from me? Can you lift this anger, this grief, this sadness, this fear? Can you give me a moment of relief here? And the thing that happens next is miraculous. God shows up with just the right tool you need. Now listen, your part is simple. You have to do so little to get so much from God. He shows up and does the heavy lifting. You don't have to do the heavy lifting. It doesn't matter what mountain you're standing at the bottom of. It doesn't matter what giant you're standing in front of. It doesn't matter how big or small the problem in front of you is. It doesn't matter if it's, I'm irritated because my husband is late from coming home from work. It doesn't matter if I am exhausted and betrayed and in shock because my husband just cheated on me. Whatever the size is, whatever the magnitude is, you don't have to be the one to do the heavy lifting. God does it. God can do it, and he will show up with just the very right tool for you to make it happen. I need you to understand that is what this is. That's what this is. God shows up and does the heavy lifting. We just need to know how to start the conversation. We just need to know how to invite him to the table with his bag of tools to do the work. The only thing that keeps this from happening is your skepticism that it will work. I can't tell you how many times I hear this. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. No, you don't know how God will do it. And so you're not going to give him an opportunity to try. I don't say that in a critical way. I'm just telling you from a life of disappointment and sadness and frustration, of all the times you've asked God to show up and fix things for you, you probably have a really big, good case that you can make against God and his willingness to show up and do anything for you. I get it. But I will also tell you this. What do you want? Peace. What does God want for you? Peace. Now, a lot of times this is how the conversation goes between us and God. God, I want peace. And God says, no way, because I also want peace for you. So we're like, okay, good, so we're on the same page. And God's like, yeah, we're on the same page. I'm ready to give you peace. And you're like, great, fill my bank account then. That will give me peace. And God's like, I was just going to give you peace. I wasn't going to give you the money. I was just going to give you peace. And so we're like, okay, well, then make sure my kids grow up and they're really good people. And God's like, I was just going to give you peace. You know, even if your kids are crappy, you can have peace. Even if your bank account is empty, you can have peace. We're looking at all of these things, and we're looking, again, if you think about this happened and now I feel this, it's two problems. We still expect that the thing that happened that kind of caused this domino effect of feelings to happen, in order for the feelings to be resolved, this has to be resolved first. The circumstances have to change, but that's not true. The circumstances of your life do not have to change in order for you to have peace. Sometimes they will. Sometimes we show up and we ask God for this miracle of peace, and he shows up and he fixes the circumstances. Sometimes the dog comes back home, and now we have the relief of the dog is back home. But I can tell you that most of the time, the miracle that you can expect and that you will experience is that despite your circumstances, you will feel okay. You will feel okay in your circumstances. You will feel okay about your circumstances. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to start to accept poor treatment. It doesn't mean you're going to be okay with the abuse. It doesn't mean you're not going to care. But it does mean you're not going to be so encumbered by pain that you don't even have the energy to fix your own problems. Because I'm telling you, if your dog gets out of the house and you're too busy inside throwing a fit and throwing things, it's going to be a lot harder to go do what you got to do to get your dog back home. That's a small example, but that's kind of where we fall in life. When we're overreacting or just reacting appropriately even to big things in our life, it takes up a lot of space, it takes up a lot of energy. And I can tell you that if this room was empty and you were filled with love, peace, joy, security, your problem solving ability is way better. And so it pays to do the work. And like I said, God's going to show up and he's going to give you that miracle. And right now you might be limited in thinking the miracle I need is that my addiction goes away. The miracle I need is for my husband to come back home. The miracle I need is for me to not have this diagnosis. The miracle I need is for me to have this much money in my account. The miracle I need is for this person to stop hurting me. If they stopped hurting me, I wouldn't feel like this. That's true. But you could also stop feeling like that anyway. When you are in a relationship with somebody and you are mad or you are hurt, it is so often that we want to go to that person and give them our hurt and say, fix it, apologize, understand, fix it so that I don't hurt. We think that when we forgive, we're giving somebody a gift, but really when we forgive somebody, we're giving ourselves a gift. What if instead of saying, I'm going to give you this pain so you can fix it, it might be someone who can't or won't. They might be so busy trying to manage their own pain, they can't make room for yours. What are you going to do? Suffer forever? No. How about this? How about I am hurt, I am sad, I am betrayed. I'm not going to wait around for you to apologize. I'm not going to wait around for you to understand. I don't know if you can. I don't know if you will. And I refuse to live like this in the meantime. So I'm taking it to someone else. I'm going to go to God and say, God, I'm mad for these reasons. I'm hurt for these reasons. And they're good reasons. I'm not in any way trying to invalidate your feelings or the experiences that you've had. They are good. I mean, they're real. They're based on real experiences. But you can go to God and say, I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm afraid for these things. These things were done to me, or I've done these things to someone else. How do I live with this? It hurts and it's heavy. Can you please remove it from me because it's not serving me? And if I'm in this space, I'm going to hurt myself more. I'm going to hurt other people. Can you just relieve the pain and replace it with peace? I want to feel something different. And it happens. God shows up. He does it. He'll bring the tool. He'll bring the right tool. I don't know what that tool is going to be, and you don't know yet, and it will change from time to time to time. I do workshops all the time. I'm talking to people all the time, and I'm saying, what was your experience? What was your miracle? Sometimes they're saying, I was upset. My boyfriend didn't call me. I didn't hear from him for a couple days. I didn't know what was going on, and I prayed, and I asked God for help, and you know what happened? He didn't call, but instead it was like I saw this visualization in my mind, and I just knew that it was okay. I was just imagining that maybe my boyfriend was just asleep. Maybe he just didn't hear me. Maybe he didn't hear his phone. Maybe he lost his phone. And I just felt peace. And the next morning he called. But what happened in between the phone call and her distress was that God came in and gave her peace a different way. Other people, they've had experiences where they said, I was anxious. I was so afraid. I was in this situation and I didn't know what to do. I was managing fear. I was managing anxiety. I was managing uncertainty. And I just said, okay, God, please help me. Help me to know what to do next. And immediately she said she just felt relief. She just felt peace. Everything felt more manageable. Someone else recently, she told me, I went on a trip to go see my mom. I've been in a space of trauma with my mom all my life. I don't enjoy my mom. Every time I go, it's stressful. And I was going there for a week. I had scheduled a day at the end of my trip to just make sure I had a day to decompress and recover before I went home. She's like, if I went up there, I was doing this work. I was trying to recover. I was trying to live in this space. And so when I was there and I was mad at my mom or uncomfortable, I went to God and I said, please help me, please help me. And what came to her as her miracle was a change in perspective. She started to see her mom different. She started to experience her mom differently. By the end of the week, she felt love and tenderness for her mother. And she said she didn't take that extra day to decompress. She stayed at her mom's that extra day. And when it was time for her to leave, she cried. And she's like, before I left, I told my mom, I'm going to miss you. She's like, that's the first time I ever said it. It's definitely the first time I've ever meant it. And she's 52 years old. She never said that to her mom and definitely had never meant it. That's what happens. God shows up at different times, in different ways, with different tools. He has the tools you don't. You feel trapped, you feel stuck. You go to an addiction because you think that's the best tool you've got. That might be the best tool you have. Time to find a new friend who has better tools. And I'm telling you, it's God. It's your higher power. He has so many tools. He's so old. He's been around for eternity. He knows how this story ends. He knows the best tool to use for you and for your relief and for your specific experience, for your specific situation, for your specific pain. The farthest you can think is change my circumstance. And God's like, you're dreaming too small. Let me show up. Let me show you a trick. I can give you relief. I can give you peace. I can give you joy in your circumstances. How cool is that? And you can find that peace no matter what, which makes you way more resilient to pain in the future. If you have to wait for your bank account to be filled in order for you to have peace, let's say your bank account fills tomorrow. 2 months later, when it's empty again, you're back to fear. But what if your bank account is empty and you still find your way to peace? Then you realize it doesn't matter what's in your bank account. You're okay. You don't have to wait to be okay. You don't have to get to the other side. You're okay right now. If you're the addict, I hope you understand that there's a better way to find relief, and it feels good. I'm telling you, a better way. I don't mean eventually, because you're going to be able to shape your life into a life that looks the way you want it to look. I'm telling you, there's a better way to feel how you want to feel. Your addiction gives it to you in a counterfeit way. There's a better way to feel how you want to feel. That the feeling you're chasing, this is a beautiful experience. To find relief in the moment. I don't mean from your addiction for life. Your addiction is a collection of pain. Addiction recovery is a consistent process of the relief of pain. And you get to live there. And guess what? When you live there and you know how to manage this pressure effectively, not you, but you know how to start that conversation with God so he can show up and give you that relief, man, you'll be chasing that high. You'll be chasing it so fast and you'll hold to it. It feels amazing. Just imagine how that space can fill with love. That's what you've been wanting the whole time. You will lose your interest in your addiction. You will no longer have a use for it. You will recognize that it's counterfeit. It doesn't do the job. God does it better, faster, it lasts way longer. Your addiction is like sand dust or sawdust. I was going to say sand, and then I said, anyway, it's like sawdust. You'll see. You'll see. This is amazing. It feels really good. So I want to tell you that addiction recovery does not have to be a time of suffering. It should be a time of unsuffering. It does not have to be a time of pain. It can be a time of unpain. It doesn't have to be a time of hurting. It can be a time of unhurting. That's what addiction recovery should be. When you hit rock bottom and you're ready to try again, don't do the things to push you to the other side. You won't get there. There's another rock bottom 10 feet ahead. But if you can move into an addiction recovery and find something that is beautiful and peaceful, it will pull you to the other side. What you're going to do is you're going to find your tool for peace. You're going to keep practicing it and you're going to chase it. If you can do this today, you can do this tonight. You may still have an addiction between now and tomorrow morning and lunchtime, tomorrow afternoon and lunchtime. But you can experience what it means to recover. Today, tonight, right now. What is the thing that's on your heart? Who are you mad at? What is the thing you're afraid about? Take it to God. Not right now. Say, God, I'm afraid of this. It's for good reason. How dare they? Or I don't want this to happen. Or I'm terrified. I'm sad. I'm mad. Doesn't matter what you take. Find one thing today. Tonight, you can experience the miracle of recovery. Because it happens miracle by miracle until you move into a life where you live with only the peace. And pain still comes in because we're human and it happens, but you'll know your way back. And the door will be open. The valve is there. The funnel is there. It doesn't matter what happens to you. It's going to keep moving. And you will be fine and you will be safe. And you can have that experience today. Pick something. Pick one thing. Bring it to your higher power. Whatever that looks like to you. Whoever that is to you. God, I'm mad about this thing. I'm afraid about this thing. It sucks. Doesn't feel good. It's taking up room. Building pressure. Can you take it? Can you give me some relief, please? And then he'll show up and he'll do the heavy lifting. And you better write it down so you can remember that God showed up and he carried you and he gave you relief. And it felt good. And a lot of times what you'll see is your craving will unravel like that. Because cravings, a lot of times, they only crowd you in when you're holding on to this. And as soon as you can identify the feelings you're holding, you take it to God and you can unravel those big feelings, you will see the addiction, the craving will also unravel. Because the craving is only a mirror reflection of the pain you are holding. And once you focus on that pain and you learn how to unravel that pain, the cravings go away. They go away. You do not have to live the rest of your life white knuckling. You can have the life that you want. You can have it look the way you want, but more importantly, you can have it feel the way that you want. I know this. This has been my experience. I talk about it all the time. I'm publishing content about this all the time. I want to share that with you. That's a really basic introduction into this. It's a really basic framework. That's really what it comes down to. Addiction recovery really comes down to building your fluency with this process. And I hope that's a good place to get you started. If you want to continue this conversation with me, I want to let you know I have 2 things that I can offer you. I'm going to even say 3 here because I'm publishing free content all the time. Click around on this YouTube channel. You'll see a lot of things that I put out because I'm trying to get this message out. Addiction recovery, it should be peaceful, and it's about chasing peace. And once you find your way through that, permanent, peaceful recovery, because who doesn't want an empty room of all of these things? So it's just peace, love, security, and you will know your way back. It feels amazing. The other thing is I have a workshop that I offer once a month. Come to my workshop. I will teach you everything I don't know. I will go a lot deeper into these principles. I will go a lot deeper into the practices and the principles and the strategies you can use to bring God into the conversation in real time and unravel your craving in real time. I mean, neutralized. And to feel that peace that I'm talking about. We move into a workshop experience and we talk about these experiences in real time. You'll have the experience in real time in the course of the workshop. This 1-day workshop, you will have this experience and you will see and you will get a muscle memory. You will have a practice for how do I find relief in real time in the moment I need it to stop your run to this. The other thing I offer is if you want to continue the conversation after the workshop or even before, I also offer a monthly group coaching. That is, again, we do it in a group. And the reason I do it in a group is because as you have these experiences on your own, one by one, you will begin to build this amazing bank of evidence that when you put the plea out there, God shows up and he does the heavy lifting. He opens his valve and you will feel that pressure go down. It's amazing. And you will start to build your bank of miracles, which will build your trust, which will make it easier to ask and easier and easier and easier to ask. That's awesome. You're building a little constellation that you can see and say, that's my bank of evidence. Now, when you do it in a group setting, we do it in the workshop in a group setting, but even every month I'm doing this with my coaching clients. We do it in a group setting because as you look and as you see the different experiences that people are having, for the one experience you had in 24 hours, if you come into a room and there's 20 people and they've had a similar experience, you're going to realize like, wow, this works all the time. Different people, different walks of life, different situations, different ways that God is showing up. You're going to see all kinds of ways that God shows up, all kinds of tools that he shows up with. And then that's going to increase, again, your bank of evidence and your faith. Maybe today it's not a financial issue, but maybe someone over there is having a financial issue and you'll see how they navigated it in a way that brought them to peace. The next time you're having a financial issue, you're going to remember that's going to be in the back of your mind. You didn't have that experience of deliverance from fear to peace, but that person did, and you remember what it looked like, and that will make you dare to believe that it can happen for you. There's a lot of power in doing this in a group setting. Of course, these are all situations that you could attend and participate in completely anonymously. I do my workshops, and I also do my coaching on Zoom. So you can turn off your camera, you can change your screen name, you can show up completely anonymously. Those are 2 opportunities I have available. You'll find the links to that below. By now, hopefully you've already signed up for my weekly newsletter. I send out more content once a week. I send out I'm always writing. I'm sending stuff out every week to help you to implement these principles a lot more deeply into your life. And again, this shouldn't be something that breaks your life. This is something that fixes your life. Right now should be your last worst day. Everything you do moving forward as you implement these principles, every day is better. Every day is better. This is the process of unhurting. This is the process of unraveling pain. This is the process of identifying peace, the vehicle of peace, and then chasing it. And then you get to live there. It's amazing. I hope that you found this video helpful. Thank you if you've gotten this far to the end. I appreciate you. I hope to hear from you, and I hope you have a really great night. And please, please take the time to practice this tonight. Like I said, find that one thing that's on your heart tonight. Bring it to God. Give him a chance to show up and to show you what he can do. And then remember it. Thank you.